people feel that energy and that emotion. And so being okay with, hey, I'm going to plant these seeds. I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to be generous. And I'm going to know that over the long haul, if I treat people this way over the next few years and the next few decades, that it's going to come back to me 100-fold. It's how the world's wired. Like, it's how the universe is wired. Like, when you plant good seeds, like, you reap what you sow.
In Napoleon Hill's timeless classic, Think and Grow Rich, he defines a mastermind group as the coordination of knowledge and effort between two or more people for the attainment of a definite purpose. In this podcast, that coordination is created between you, me, and our amazing guests. Our definite purpose is achieving extraordinary results in your business and your life. I'm your host, Brad Mulvey. Welcome to the Millennial Mastermind Podcast. Hello, Millennial Mafia. Welcome to the Millennial Mastermind Podcast, where it is my job to interview guests who will provide you with the tools, tactics, and inspiration to take your business and your life to the next level. Today's guest has an extraordinary story of success and achieved it by applying somewhat unconventional strategies. John Ruhlin began his career selling knives for a company called Cutco. For those of you who listened to the Hal Elrod episode 99, yes, that's the same Cutco. After applying those strategies, he became the number one salesperson in the 70-year history of Cutco knives out of 1.5 million other reps and distributors. Not long after, he began speaking on stages around the country to teach sales and marketing teams how to build relationships in unconventional ways. John went on to found the Ruhlin Group, a gift strategy and logistics company that has created gift packages for some of the largest companies and pro sports teams in the world. He is also the author of Giftology, the art and science of using gifts to cut through the noise, increase referrals, and strengthen retention. So John, thanks so much for joining us today. How's everything going for you today?
Things are great, man. Just got back from Colorado and I'm ready to rock this out.
Beautiful, beautiful. So we first met at John Berghoff's event, the Quantum Leap Mastermind. John is a Cutco guy. As I mentioned, Hal Elrod's a Cutco guy. There's a few others who are influencers in the entrepreneurial space like John Vroman. So what is it that they're teaching you guys over there, or what is in the water at Cutco that has just produced these amazing entrepreneurial minds?
Yeah, well, it definitely has. I would say it's the number one sales training and personal development company for college kids on the planet. And I think that when you're young, high school doesn't teach you how to handle objections and how to make your own schedule and how to sell or sell yourself or build relationships. And college really doesn't either. It's very textbooky, and maybe you do an internship, but really Cutco is one of those things where to go in and build relationships in homes that you've never been and sell thousands of dollars to knives to one person. That's a really weird, awkward thing to ask somebody to do. So it puts you out there, and anytime you're forced to be uncomfortable, oftentimes that's where growth takes place. So I see, there's literally, I come across SVPs of pro sports teams and CEOs that are like, oh, I sold knives back when I was a freshman 30 years ago. Like, it is literally, it's just an amazing culture. A lot of times the managers are taking people to Tony Robbins events and I read my first business book, the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, the John Maxwell book, when I'm 18, 19, 20 years old. And so it is a culture of growth and speaking and just doing things that are not normal for 21-year-olds to be doing.
I love it. Yeah, it's so powerful to get exposed to some of those things early on. And that's one of my passions with this show, is trying to get some of those messages out. We may have missed the college crowd. Maybe some of those folks are listening, but just getting people in front of that, those resources, I think, is so powerful, especially if you can do it early on in your life when you still have so much room for growth ahead of you.
Yep.
So for that time in your life, How did you become that top salesperson in the history of the company? This kind of reading through that in the bio, that is such an unbelievable accomplishment. I'm so curious to hear and to share with the audience how you got to that level.
Well, I'd like to say it was like this master plan I wrote out, my 10-year life goal plan at 20. But I mean, a lot of it was I was fortunate to have mentors. I've always sought out mentors, oftentimes 2-3 times my age, and spend time with people that are way more successful than me. And I've done that over time through masterminds and groups like QLM and organizations like EO. But I think even, when I was 20, I was dating a girl, and her dad was an attorney, but he was really he was a rainmaker. Every deal in town came his way. He was radically generous. And when you're poor, you notice when people are very generous. And so I was just kind of spending a lot more time with him and noticing he would just do crazy things, like buy, a semi-load of noodles because he got a deal on it, and everybody at church the next Sunday ended up with 20 cases of noodles. And I'm like, Paul, that was 20 G's. Are you insane? And he's like, I know, but did you see their smiles? And I'm like, even the most evil person on the planet would smile if they got, a year's supply of noodles. So I witnessed this generosity in him. And that really impacted me early on. And so I remember pitching him the idea. I thought, Paul's giving away things all the time. Maybe he'll give away a pocket knife to all his clients that are CEOs of insurance companies and lumber yards and all that. And he changed my life forever when he asked me the question. He said, John, could I engrave the paring knives and give those out? And I'm like, Paul, you're going to give a kitchen tool to a bunch of dudes that are millionaire, billionaire guys? That's weird. Why? And he said, John, in 40 years of business, the reason I have more deal flow than I could ever imagine is because I found that if you take care of the family, everything else takes care of itself. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was it wasn't about the knife. It was about understanding reciprocity and how to build relationships and how to play the long game. I mean, Gary Vaynerchuk talks about treating things like the 50-year hustle. And so I started to plant seeds, and really I started to invest, $200 as a college kid is a lot of money for anybody, but especially when you're in college, it was a big deal. But I would send off, carving sets to CEOs that I'd want to get a meeting with. And my feeling was whether I got the deal or not, just spending time with a bunch of CEOs would build my network. It was an investment worth having. $200 to get a CEO in my corner was nothing. And if I sell them some knives, great. And so I started to do this on a monthly basis. I was sending out gifts to people I'd want to get a meeting with, and I would engrave the CEO's name, spouse's name, put a little handwritten note inside that said, carve out 5 minutes for me. I promise it'll be worth your time. And people thought, my buddies thought I was insane. They're like, dude, why wouldn't you just you could go spend that on, drinks for all of us? And I'm like, no, I'm going to invest in these relationships and in myself. And so I'd get these meetings, the CEOs expecting somebody in their 50s, and they're their minds blown. They're like, oh, I thought you'd be 50 years old. Are you in college? And I'm like, yep. They're like, are you here to sell me knives? And I'm like, no, I'm here to help you and your 1,000 sales reps do exactly what I did to you, to your top 10,000 relationships. And the CEOs would just be blown away. And I would walk out of, these boardrooms that are all mahogany and whatever else at 20 years old, wearing the one suit and tie that I had, with an order for 1,000 knife sets, because it wasn't about the knife. It was about using it as a tool to drive results. And so I started to build this, network of high level relationships. Some I would sell a lot of knives to, some I wouldn't. Some I'd sell knives to for their wife, sell, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. But I started to build out this group of people that were opening doors for me. And I'm a farm boy from Ohio, so I didn't grow up in this with this amazing network of country club buddies, and so I had to build it from scratch. But I did it, one relationship at a time over those 3-4 years. And so that's why I was able to sell so much. And I'm not really a salesperson. It was because I was using this system, this methodology that I had witnessed in Paul, and I kind of tweaked it over the years. And that's how we started to land the Cubs as clients and NASCAR and whatever else. It's when you take care of people and you blow their mind, they want to go out of their way to open up doors, and they take your phone call and all of that. So that's really, it wasn't, I was the best closer when it came to but I was using knives as this driver, and everybody else was even Cutco thought the orders were fraud initially, because they thought I was selling them on eBay, because they'd never seen an order come in for 1,000 knife sets before. So anyway, that's a little peek into to some of those early years.
Nice. Yeah. One little nugget I want to pull out of that is when you were sending the knives to those CEOs, you were putting engravings on with their name or their company logo, not your own. And I just had this happen pretty masterfully with a company that I think you're familiar with, Interview Valet.
Oh, yeah.
Just sent me, and I'm curious if you were even part of this, but just a little candle, nothing special, in a little like tin container, but it had my podcast logo on the top of it. And then on the side, it said, Brad, we just want to thank you for being a shining light in the podcasting world. And I just thought it was so cool. I mean, it was not an expensive thing, but it's still sitting on my shelf, just displayed. I don't even like the scent, but it doesn't even matter. It's such a cool thing. So I feel like that is such a more powerful gift than when people put their own branding and shit all over it.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, Tom is a buddy, and he's opened up a number of doors for podcasts for me, and we've traded stories back and forth. And I actually recommended a couple other gifts for him to do, but he told me what he was going to do, and I'm like, dude, that's spot on. Like, I send out hundreds of thousands of dollars of gifts every year personally, just to interesting people, and not one of them has Ruhlin Group or Giftology. Like, that's the cheesiest thing on the planet, is to make the gift about yourself. And yet most people have been taught that's marketing. You got to have marketing. It's like, you actually you kept the candle, even though you don't even like the candle, because they made it all about you. Like, that's
exactly.
by a gift by its very nature should be recipient focused, not giver focused. And we've confused what a promotional item is and what a gift is. And when you make it a gift, it really resonates with people. And I don't care if you're 20 years old or 120 years old. Like, we love when people make us the big deal, not themselves.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And then another thing you mentioned is that you've been especially in those early days, you were sending these things and buying these gifts with the money out of your own pocket. And as a college kid, sending a $200 gift, like you said, your buddies were thinking you should be buying drinks with that. That's a lot of money when you're in college. And obviously that dollar amount has increased over the years. But it seems like it's pretty clear that you've seen a positive ROI on that, just in terms of the relationships and what comes back eventually on the other side. Yeah.
I mean, I see people all the time, like when they're starting their business, they're like, I don't have money to do gifts like you do, John. I'm like, I wish you could go back to when I was 20 and see like that I was in a dorm room. I'm driving like an old S10. Like, I didn't have money either, but people have no problem spending $200 on a plane ticket or $1,000 on a trade show or whatever else. And they're like, oh, that's an investment. I'm like, imagine if you just took like the top 5 mentors, investors, influencers in your community, and you sat down with them, instead of saying, I want to pick your brain, go there with the idea of offering value, and then send them a $200 gift afterwards. Like, imagine like you just budgeted $1,000 for the year and you pick the 5 most influential, most important people. You get time with them, or if you can't get time with them, send them the gift on the front end and say, hey, I'd love to get 30 minutes. I know your time's super valuable. Hey, carve out some time for me. But when I saw that, when I acknowledged people for their time that were these baller like CEOs and influencers, and I didn't ask for anything in return. It's not like I sent the gift and then magically the next day I'm like, hey, would you like to refer me some business? Because that's how most people do gifts. They make it a transactional thing. Like, hey, I give you this, now you have to give me that. And nobody likes to be manipulated that way, but everybody likes to be acknowledged. And when I would do this for people, the CEOs would be like, John, I have clients and I have suppliers and vendors and people that we buy stuff from that I'd do $1 million in business with them, and they don't send me as nice a gift as you sent me just for giving you 30 minutes of my time. Like, it just flips everything on its head. And when you're young and you do this and you write the handwritten note and you take the time to do the little details well, like things our great grandfathers would have done, it blows people away. I mean, just to the point where I've had people, a decade goes by, I haven't talked to them in a decade, and I send them a note and they're like, John, I'm still, I think about you all the time, whether I want to or not, because I'm still using those dumb knives, but they're awesome. They have my name on them, and I smile and I smirk every time I use them, and my wife still loves them and she still wants to meet you. And, taking the time to do those thoughtful things and make an investment where other people just see like an insane expense. That's how you stand out in an ocean full of, people all saying, I'm an expert. Hey, I'm bootstrapping a startup. Hey, I'm hustling and grinding. It's like, get off of social media for a second and go like connect with one real person and then go all in on that person. That's how you get people in your corner that, Tim Ferriss talks about, like building the tribe of 1,000 raving fans. Like you get 1,000 people that love you, that can't stop talking about you. That's how you build, a massive following, not by, taking a picture in front of a private plane that's not yours. Like it's a little bit different than what people are teaching, but that's at least for us, that's been the truth.
Absolutely. So to get really practical with it, as you mentioned, people may not have, massive funds to go towards gifting early on, but it doesn't take a lot. I'm curious if especially for the listeners of this show who may just be starting a business and things are really tight, are there things that you've seen that can be done pretty cost effectively without a huge expense, but just kind of you've seen just work really well or blow the minds of the recipients? And I mean, I'm just thinking about it now, the candle example, not hugely expensive, but was so impactful for me just because it was unexpected.
Yeah.
Just curious if there's any really practical things that we could give people to start thinking about just to get the wheels turning.
Yeah. Well, I think, when people ask, like, we get that question a lot, and we also get it in companies where they're like, we're dealing with Walmart and we can't even give them a pencil. Like you couldn't even give them a candle. You can't buy them a cup of coffee.
Right.
So this question is pretty common. I would say one of the most effective things that's underutilized is taking the time and the care to write a really thoughtful handwritten note. And I'm talking about the note that takes you maybe 30 minutes to write. You write a note like that to somebody and put thought into it and pour your heart out into it. Super powerful. You want to take it a step further, then you probably heard Hal or Vergoff talk about this, but you take that note and then go read it to the person in person and then give it to them. And oftentimes tears will get shed. So imagine like your most important mentors, advisors, investors, key people that have been in your corner early on or believed in you when you're in high school or whatever else. Like go to those people and go thank them that way. And you want to talk about them never forgetting you and wanting to run through walls for you. And what's cool is it makes you feel better too. Like when you show gratitude to people and actually mean it, it raises both of your levels of happiness. I mean, statistically, it's been shown in every study on the planet. It's crazy, but it takes time, takes effort, takes a little bit of vulnerability. I would also say that of the gifts that I send out, whether it's a $200 gift or a $2 gift, 80% of them are targeted not at the executive, but they're targeted at their inner circle. So their spouse, one of the reasons the knives work really well, the candle would work the same way. The spouse, their kids, their assistant, and their pets. So I've seen where you send somebody something that's personalized with their pet's name on it. And, maybe it's a $40 like custom leather collar or something, but they love their dog or they love their cat or whatever. And doing something to honor the people in their life that they value the most, that oftentimes get the short end of the stick when it comes to business, like they're not included in the golf and the bourbon and the cigars and the fancy trips and the wine, all that kind of stuff. Acknowledge those people and make the decision maker, influencer, whoever, look like the hero to their family and to their inner circle. And that's where you can spend $1 and get $100 return, because that's where most people are like, oh, this person loves bourbon, so everybody on the planet sends them bourbon. So you send them a bottle of bourbon, it's like, oh, thanks. Like, oh, $40 bottle of bourbon. Oh, great. It's like, it's going to get consumed, forgotten about. You send them something that their wife or husband are into, or something that their kids are into, and personalize it. That's the other thing is like, I don't send anything out unless I can send it with a handwritten note, and unless I can personalize and engrave their last name, their family name, a quote that they live by, their logo, whatever it is, as much as I can make it meaningful to them. Like we had one guy that we did a knife set for where James Altucher, and we did it with Hal actually, and we sent him like it was a $2,000 knife set, so it's not insignificant. And for most people, it'd be like maybe their entire budget for the year or 2 years or 5 years. But we engraved a quote from each of his 10 books on each of the knives. And you want to talk about melting his face off. Now, you could take that same concept and send something to somebody, and maybe it's only a $20 item, but you really take the time to research what makes that person tick, and you go all in on customizing it to them or to their spouse or to their kids, and make it like uber personal. Imagine if somebody sent you something and it was like all like your best episodes, episode 87, like the ones that impacted them the most. And they wrote a note saying, hey, here's the 5 episodes that really changed my life forever, and I've started this business. Like, I imagine how meaningful that would be to you. And a lot of times people, they're CEOs of companies, are underappreciated. Now, people will send them stuff, but getting something from Amazon that's just another thing versus an artifact where there's meaning and legacy and depth to it, it's not about the dollars. Like, I'll beat out people that send Rolexes all day long and drop tens of thousands of dollars because I'm going to take however many, $100 item or $500 item and make it meaningful. And that's where we win for our clients, is helping them choose things that are going to be meaningful.
Man, I love that. I'm just thinking as you're talking about gifting for the family and for the extended people outside or in that person's life. Like, if somebody sent something to me for my dog, like, I would love it, but my fiance would like invite you over for dinner. Like, that would be a game changer.
Yeah.
So that is, that cracks me up. So how do we do this in a way that isn't transactional? I know you mentioned that earlier, that gifting done wrong is when people feel like, okay, they did this, now I have to do something for them. And it feels like that transaction. So how do we avoid that and just really make it seem like it's coming from, which it should be, by the way, but coming from a place of generosity with no expectation of return?
Well, I think, the words that you use in the note that go with it, if you're like, hey, we should get together and talk doing business again, like, any you have to be very careful about how you present the gift and the timing of the gift. Like, a lot of times people send gifts after referrals. They're like, oh, I should say thank you, right? And I'm like, yeah, you should say thank you with a handwritten note, but you didn't want a transactional gift. They opened a door for you that got you your first, $10,000 deal, and you send them a $100 Starbucks gift card. And you're feeling good about yourself, but really what you did in their head, they open up a door for you, and you send them $100, like $10,000 and $100. Does that seem equal or good? Like, you turned it into a transactional business. So giving gifts at times when they're not out of obligation or expected, or at times where you should give a gift, it's because I wanted to give the gift. Making sure you use the right language in the note, and then not following up on the gift and saying, hey, I sent you that gift. Let's talk referrals. Let's talk deals. Let's talk, like, people can tell when you send something and then like you leave it and you're like, you're not asking them about it. Like, hey, still liking that candle? Like, it's like one thing when you send a gift and then like you basically don't even talk about it again. Now, if they bring it up, it's like, oh, that's awesome. I'm glad you love it. I was really thinking about you when I sent it, and here's why. But I think that, that making sure that you're conveying that it was a just because, not to manipulate. And then I think, not keeping score. Like, a lot of times people will do that, but then in their head, they're like, I better get something. I sent this, this, and this. And people feel that energy and that emotion. And so being okay with, hey, I'm going to plant these seeds. I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to be generous. And I'm going to know that over the long haul, if I treat people this way over the next few years and the next few decades, that it's going to come back to me 100-fold. Like, whether you believe in a God or not, like, it's how the world's wired. Like, it's how the universe is wired. Like, when you plant good seeds, like, you reap what you sow. And so those are some of the things that we've seen that take it from, hey, he's trying to manipulate me, to, wow, they're really just a thoughtful person.
Yeah. And I think to echo that, if things come back, 100-fold or even 10-fold, you don't need to be batting 100 with those things. So for those people who find it hard to, give without the expectation of something coming back, just try to reframe it of, okay, maybe something will come back, but it's not going to be 100%. So those ones that do, just be excited about those are going to be big. And the other ones, don't worry about those if you think it's a quote unquote loss, which is a piss poor way of thinking about it anyways. But
yeah, well, and over the long haul,
hack.
Yeah. And over the long haul, like, I've had times where I've sent gifts over the course of, years, like 7 years it took us to land the Cubs as clients. So like, if you're playing the long game, like, seeds that you plant that you think were dead, that were a loss, like, who knows where that person's going to shift and be, and where you're going to be, and you're going to cross that bridge again. more than likely you're going to run into that person again or see them again. They may be in a completely different position to help you or to open a door or to endorse you, or maybe there's even conversations that are taking place behind the scenes that you don't even know about. And so you land, I know there's times where I'm landing deals or people are buying books or hiring us to keynote these events. And I'm like, I know there's somebody that endorsed us or did something behind the scenes, because this does not make any logical sense. Like, I know that there's people that are working on my behalf, even when I'm not aware of exactly who it is. And that's powerful when you do that over the long haul, to have thousands of people that want to see you succeed. Like, it's just, but most people don't wait. They don't get to that point. They're like, oh, I did gifting for like 3 months, or I was generous, or I was a connector for 3 months. It's like, that's not how life works. You have to play the long game.
So I'm going to take a little bit of a left turn here. Recently, I've become acutely aware of comparing yourself and the issues of comparing yourself with others. And I think that this is only increased with the prevalence of social media, and especially in the younger generations like us millennials. And so throughout this conversation, it's clear that you've experienced massive success and have done a great job with this stuff throughout your career. But I'm curious if there's a story that you might be able to share of a challenge that you've faced throughout your journey that you've had to overcome in a time when, things weren't going so well, and kind of how you face that situation. Yeah.
Oh man. In 17, 18 years of business, like, I mean, I can go back a decade ago. I almost went bankrupt. I mean, I almost lost the business. I mean, it was one of those kind of situations where, everything that could go wrong in the business went wrong. I had an employee who was stealing from me. It was my right-hand person and my CPA. I had a death in the family. My brother's young 18-month-old son drowned. I got home from that and had an IRS audit envelope on the table. It was just like everything that could go wrong. And literally, like, I went from like living on the top of the mountain to the depths and valleys of like it was desert, man. And that's the same time I started, dating my now wife. So she got to see the worst side of being an entrepreneur. And fortunately, she still said yes, even though it was a very rocky relationship to start out with, because I was just barely keeping my lips above water. I refused to go bankrupt, but I was living on $1,000 a month. And it was just crazy how, it was just one of the worst times of my life where I just really wanted to, give up. And fortunately, I had people around me to help encourage me, but it was bad.
Yeah. So what was the mindset there, or how did you turn it around and persevere through those challenging, dark times?
I mean, I think for me, part of it was my faith. I'm a big believer in we're put on this earth, and that there's a creator, and that there's a purpose to my life. And so I didn't feel like I was done yet. And so I had that to rely on. And so that was huge to have that, kind of, hidden strength, I guess. I had good people around me. I had surrounded myself with good people. And so I had those people to help take some things off my plate and be in my corner. And so that was massive. And I just, at some level, like, I took it a day at a time, and I focused on what I could control. And, but there was times I'd be lying if I didn't say, like, there weren't times that were like, man, this just isn't worth it. I just want to give up. I can't just go get a real job. Just be, like, this whole entrepreneur thing just sucks. And so, but I think that, having something bigger than yourself that you believe in, and, for me, it was my Christian faith, and then having the right people around me, and then just taking it a day at a time, and realizing, I think, I've, guys like Hal will tell you, like, the depth that you're in, the valley that you're in, like, it too will pass. Like, he just went through cancer, went through a year of hell. But most things over time will get better if you continue to work on them and trust the process. And there is, even if you don't see it, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. That's a cliche, but it's true. Like, most seasons don't last forever. Like, there's, it may feel like it is when you're in that 6-month or 12-month or even a couple year period. But for me, I just one foot at a time. Let's focus on what I can control. Let's trust, that God's got a bigger purpose for my life, and that I'm not going to be in this depth for forever. Mm-hmm. And then had the encouragement of some very close friends to kind of keep going, and all of that together allowed me to eventually kind of push through and kind of reinvent myself and keep plugging on.
Those are super powerful words. So thanks for being willing to share kind of that stage of your life. I think it's just so important for people to hear that too, because I myself consume a lot of podcasts and books, and oftentimes it's, the successes and the highs that get highlighted and talked about the most. So I think it's really important to also hear about people's struggles and how they overcame those, because we all have those challenges in our lives. So Yep. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
One thing, go ahead. Did you want to add to that?
No, I was going to say it's anybody. I think that most people, I mean, even right now, I can point to the scoreboard of the successes, but everybody, the higher, I would say that, the longer you're alive and the more people that you love and care about, you have kids, spouses, family members, everybody, or I should say most people are either going into a challenge, in the middle of a challenge, or coming out of a challenge. Mm-hmm. At any given time. Now, people handle those differently. Some people are able to handle them in stride, and other times, it's like a crushing. But I think that anybody that's like, oh yeah, they're only, and I think that's the thing with social media is it's only your best highlight reel. It's only like the Sports Center, the 15 seconds of the best parts. It's it leaves out the other, 2 hours of the game, of the grind and the challenges and the failures and all of that. So I think, and we all, that makes us human. We can all relate with those failures and whatever else. So I appreciate you asking.
So final question I'll ask here. If you could hop in a time machine and go back to talk to yourself just as you're getting started there at Cutco, before you've learned any of these things about, or I guess you already had learned them earlier on before you've tested and experienced the successes of gifting. Is there any advice that you've really picked up or ingrained it within yourself over the past, the years of you doing this, that you would give to young John Ruhlin as he's about to kick off his Cutco career?
Yeah, I would say that this, for me, selling half the business and bringing in a partner who thought differently and was skilled differently than me was huge. And I think I always, at least initially, thought I need to do this on my own. I need to project all of the success and whatever else. And I was afraid to, I was hiring people and, was kind of insecure about, operating remotely and not having a building or a business, official building and all that kind of stuff. And so I think, being okay with operating at kind of a bootstrap level and realizing I didn't have to do it all by myself, and bringing in other partners. I wish I would have done that way sooner. It made my life the quality of my life, the projection and the trajectory of our business changed radically by doing that and humbling myself. And so I wish I would have done that earlier.
Yeah, that's huge, because so often you think of entrepreneurship and starting a business as, all right, I've got to go out there and forge my name and do it on my own and, earn my spot. So that's great. Well, John, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on today. I know that people are going to be loving this conversation and want to learn more about you, more about the business, potentially check out the book. So where can we point people to find out more about yourself and what you're up to?
Yeah, well, I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't show up with a gift, right? So I would say most people are like, man, what are the things I shouldn't give as a gift, or can you give me some pointers? I get that on airplanes, I get that emails, all that kind of stuff. So we created for your tribe. If you go to giftologybook.com/Brad, they can go download the 10 worst gifts to avoid giving. And then there's an explanation for why those are the 10 worst. And so they can obviously go buy the book on Amazon or, Audible, Kindle, all that kind of stuff at Amazon. But before they even go buy the book, download those 10, and, whether it's a solopreneur or even people applying it, what's cool is it works whether you're, working for a big company and you're just doing interpersonal business and relationships. It works For startups, it works for pro sports teams. Like I've leveraged this list with just about everybody that we've come in contact with. And so it's our go-to kind of filter and guide, and they can download it for free at giftologybook.com/Brad. And so that's where I would start. And then if you're like, yeah, this is good stuff, and I want to dive in and learn more, they can go Google our name and check out our websites and all that kind of stuff. But I'd start with the list.
That's awesome. I'm definitely going to check that out after this call. Make sure that I don't have any of those ready to go for anybody.
Understand, man.
Thanks, John. Really appreciate the time. This was a blast and loved hearing what you had to share.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Brad.
Hey guys, thank you again for stopping by today to spend a little bit of time with me and the rest of the Millennial Mafia. Just a reminder, you can find all of today's show notes at millennialmm.com/podcast. And if you haven't heard yet, I'm opening up my calendar to you, the listeners, to hop on a 15-minute call with me. The sole purpose of this call is to connect and get to know each other. I want to forge true relationships with you so that we can build up an amazing network and community of ambitious millennials who are going to be the leaders and influencers of tomorrow. If you're interested, please just go to millennialmm.com/call and snag a 15-minute time slot. I look forward to connecting with you. Peace out.